guys labeled Green Lantern and one of them's just labeled by his actual name. That does not seem fair, does it? Really, like the way this probably should have been labeled is, Green Lantern colon Kilowog and Kyle Rayner. I'm just saying. I don't know if there's some kind of legal trademark reason they had to do that, but it's still stupid. So this was a 2-pack that I kind of feel like didn't need to be a 2-pack. This figure has already pretty much been released. I'm pretty sure this is just the same figure. Might be a slightly different head sculpt, but we're going to have a closer look at that when we open it up. I don't know if that's a different head sculpt or if it's a different paint app, but we're going to find out. So yeah, I was kind of irritated that they made this a 2-pack because I really wanted the Kilowog figure, and I kind of felt like my bases were covered as far as Kyle Rayner because I already had this one. Although I will admit, I like the colors better on this one. So we'll get into all that. Let's have a look at the back, and I guess they weren't able to find a good picture of Kyle Rayner and Kilowog together, so we've got 2 different pictures slapped together. This would have been the issue where Kyle Rayner would have taken over as Green Lantern way back in the 90s, and a more modern piece for Kilowog. So other than that, pretty much standard DC Multiverse packaging we've seen a million times. I got this on Amazon, and you can see it says gold label. That means it's an exclusive. So I guess the only place you're going to get this is going to be Amazon. But let's go ahead and open it up. So we're going to cut the tape at the bottom here. And there are 3 pieces of tape. Probably because the box is so big and because Kilowog is such a big thing. So let's go ahead and get him out. That's tight. That's what she said. All right, so he's heavy. He's a big heavy boy. All right. So once again, we have, as often with these 2-packs, a really nice background that would have made for a really nice backdrop, except for they've got these bubbles glued on with the trading cards and the stands. So they're about to get ripped all to hell. I just knocked one of our guest stars into the floor. Excuse me. Gotta pick him up. Can't leave superheroes lying around. That'd just be disrespectful. All right, so there is the Kyle Rayner trading card. Thankfully, the glue wasn't too strong on this, so I was able to get the trading card off pretty easily. Come on. Unfortunately, still too strong to, prevent tearing the actual cardboard background. And there is the Kilowog trading card. Now let's go ahead and read these trading cards since I've been bad about forgetting them lately. That's what the backs look like. And we'll do Kilowog first. Kilowog, Green Lantern Corps, data file, real name, non-applicable. His real name's Kilowog. It just said so. A brilliant geneticist on his home world, Bolavax Vic. I'm not sure how that's pronounced because I've only ever read it. I've never heard anybody say it. Bolavax Vic. Darn my dyslexia. Kilowog was proud to serve as Green Lantern of Sector 647 following the destruction of his planet during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Kilowog found purpose in training new Green Lantern recruits, teaching essential tools to survive the most dangerous job in the universe. All right, so there's Kilowog's card. Now let's go ahead and read Kyle Rayner's card, which again has that really nice piece of Darryl Banks artwork on it from the cover of his it wasn't his first appearance, but it was the issue where he became Green Lantern, really. So, oh, well, then I tried to peel the stand off, and that one, the glue actually was pretty strong. I'm kind of multitasking here. Come on. Might as well look at the stand real quick. Standard DC Multiverse stand with the black glossy DC logo embossed onto it. And while the glue was very weak on the trading cards, it's like super strong on these stands for whatever reason. So we got both the stands off. All right, we're done with that. Done with this piece. We can set it aside. All right, Kyle Rayner. And here it says Green Lantern Kyle Rayner. Real name Kyle Rayner. Data file. During one of the Green Lantern Corps, I keep wanting to say corpse, keep wanting to pronounce that P. During one of the Green Lantern Corps' darkest hours, young artist Kyle Rayner was chosen to be the universe's lone Green Lantern by a guardian of the universe named Ganthet. The torchbearer for all the Green Lantern Corps would become in the future. Kyle Rayner went on to master all 7 colors of the emotional spectrum, the only Lantern to ever accomplish such a feat. And yeah, so that's that. Let's go ahead and get the figures out of the package. All right, so we'll do Kyle first. And we're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on Kyle because, like I said, I've basically opened this figure before. I mean, we'll go over the articulation and all that stuff, but most of the time, I think talking about this Kyle Rayner figure is going to be spent discussing the differences between the one here and the one that I already had. This okay, so then we got the ones at the arms. Now we gotta get the ones at the shins, and they're just in there in the most annoying way. Why do they do this? Okay. And as we can see, it's a good thing that they had him rubber banded in there so tight, because otherwise he'd just fall right out. He's in there good. Does not need those rubber tabs. All right. There's still one around the middle. Double tab. Come on. Okay. There. Now we got him out of the package. And there are a number of accessories that come with this figure. This has a rubber tab around it for some reason. I'm just going to break it. I don't even care. So, samurai armor, the Green Lantern emblem on the front, made out of a translucent green plastic. All these accessories are going to be made out of translucent green plastic with one exception, and that is this extra hand that he has. I'm going to use the tape for that. I'm going to use a knife to cut the tape for that one. So he has an extra open hand for his ring hand. Set that aside for now. And he has, of course, like any Green Lantern figure should have, he comes with his power battery. And of course, Kyle had a very distinct design to his power battery. Set that aside for the moment. And then we have a katana. It might be a Ninja too, but it's a straight bladed katana. So obviously Kyle had been watching some samurai movies that week and it left an impression on him. And then he's such a big manga fan, apparently. I think this is kind of like the sword from Final Fantasy or something, so he's probably playing some video games too. Got that nice big thick sword. Now it's on Kyle's side of the packaging, but it does look like it's got a pretty thick handle, so Kilowog could probably hold it too. So, but I'm not sure who it's actually designed for. We'll put it in both these characters' hands and see how it works. So we'll get to Kilowog's accessories when we get to Kilowog. For now, let's talk about Kyle Rayner for a little bit. All right, so let's go over his articulation real fast. He can look up about that far. He can look down about that far. His head rotates all the way around. It can tilt quizzically from side to side. Kyle Rayner seems like he gets confused a lot, so that's probably good. He's got arms that rotate all the way around the shoulder. He does have a bicep swivel, so they rotate all the way around the bicep. He has butterfly joints. The arms can move in about that far and move out about that far as that goes. His arms can raise up about that far. Get that bicep turned back around. So pretty good range of motion there. He's got double jointed elbows. That's about the range of motion you get on the elbows. He's got the cool Mcfarlane ball joints at the wrists, so we can move his wrists around any which way we want to. He's got a Green Lantern ring on his right hand. He's got the cool Mcfarlane torso articulation. We move his torso around any which way we want. Very cool. Legs can kick up about that far. And they are slightly hindered by the rubber trunk piece, but that's pretty standard as far as Mcfarlane figures go, honestly. He's got the double jointed knees. That's about the range of motion you get on the knees. So it doesn't seem to have a boot cut at all, even though I think they could have given him a boot cut. But he's got the cool Mcfarlane ankle articulation, so you can move his ankles around any which way you want. They point up about that far and point down about that far. And then he's got toe articulation just to show off. All right, there we go. We got through all that real fast. Now let's compare these two figures. Now, I did think that this was going to be a straight-up repaint of the previous Kyle Rayner figure, but upon closer examination, I noticed that the head sculpt is actually slightly different. Whereas this one has a little bit more of a neutral expression to his face. This one has like a slight smile with a little bit of teeth showing. And they both kind of overdid it on the lipstick on these figures, I think. So maybe a little bit more of a neutral shade would have been better. But they do have some very rosy lips. I'll put it that way. And of course, he's Kyle Rayner, so he's got to have the crab mask. It's not Kyle Rayner if it don't have the crab mask. And they did a really good job of translating this costume into 3 dimensions. Mcfarlane did the thing where, you know, as usual, they add a little more surface detail here and there to certain parts of it. And you can see there's like an interesting texture over the entire suit that carried over from the previous one. They did do another Kyle Rayner that was wearing a more modern suit. This is obviously supposed to be, like I said, his 90s suit. But that's the suit that I like best for Kyle Rayner anyway. So let's go ahead and have him with his accessories. And since I want to have him with both of his accessories, I'm going to swap out the fist hand for the more open hand. And we can put his samurai sword into that hand. Make sure it's turned the right way. His katana. And we'll put the power battery into that hand so you can hold that as well. And while we're at it, we might as well put the samurai armor onto him. And that way we can get a look at what Kyle looks like when he's all geared up. There we go. Pretty cool, huh? One of the things I liked about Kyle Rayner as a character is he was supposed to be an artist. And since he was an artist, that meant he was supposed to be, in theory, a little more creative with how he used his ring constructs. And there was kind of an edict to try to not do the same thing every single time, or at least to try to do, or not do the same thing every single time, and if possible, do something different every single time. Hal Jordan was kind of infamous for making big fists and big boxing gloves, and those were kind of like the tropey things he'd go back to from time to time. But they kind of wanted to try to avoid that with Kyle, and I think that was a good decision. Not that I have any problem with Hal Jordan and his penchant for giant hands, because but to me, it's the sort of thing where it's like that's kind of a trademark of that character, and you wanted Kyle to be a little more unique. So I think Kyle Rayner was a victim of certain editorial edicts at DC at the time. Like, the idea that there could only be one Green Lantern was kind of absurd, because you've got more than one Flash running around. Why can't you have more than one Green Lantern? They got rid of basically all these cool characters because they wanted Kyle to be the only one. There's no Sinestro. John Stewart became a Dark Star. Remember Dark Stars? Yeah. Guy Gardner got turned into some kind of weird alien thing. Sinestro was dead. Did I mention Sinestro was dead? That irked me. And probably the dumbest thing of all, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, wasn't even allowed to be called Green Lantern anymore. He had to be called Sentinel. I'm sorry, Sentinel is a big purple robot that hunts mutants. Alan Scott was, and always will be Green Lantern. So yeah, I was kind of irritated by all. I refused. I just absolutely refused to call Alan Scott Sentinel. That was. I feel even more strongly about that than I feel about the whole Captain Marvel thing. So, so, so yeah, I think Kyle bore the brunt of a lot of that, but I think Kyle was actually a pretty decent character, and they did do a good job with Kyle. But I think a lot of fans were never really able to connect with Kyle Rayner because they associated him with the shabby treatment of a lot of these characters, but most especially Hal Jordan. I think that was something where like a lot of fans just could not get beyond that. And I think that most fans wound up being a lot more forgiving of that and kind of did embrace Kyle at least a little bit once Hal Jordan had been redeemed and the whole rebirth storyline happened. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for Kyle Rayner. I spent more time talking about Kyle Rayner than I intended to, but I guess I had something to say. So there's that. Oh, it's such a heavy figure. Now for the real rock star of this set. The whole reason I bought this set. Kilowog. All right, let's get him out here. So first of all, we have this power battery. And as you might imagine, Kilowog's power battery is deeply embedded in the plastic. But what I was going to say actually is you might imagine Kilowog's power battery is much larger than Kyle Rayner's because he's a much larger character. But also they did some interesting things with this where it looks like it's almost hewn from rock, which I think is pretty cool. Kilowog was a character who was simple. I don't mean simple like he's stupid, but I mean like, he was a basic kind of guy. I'm trying to find a way to say that doesn't sound backhanded. But yeah, that's why I feel like this texture is really good for a power battery for Kilowog. I think that works out really well. The other accessory is behind the figure itself, so I guess let's take the figure out first. Since it's going to be a lot easier to get the figure out first, and then take out the accessory than dig the accessory out from underneath the figure. So, he's got double tabs around the wrists. It's bad enough when they had the double tab around the torso, but now it's around the wrists too. I know he's a big figure, but please, don't need this. This is completely unnecessary. And these ones, like, he's got this ridged thing on his boots. I wonder if he reuses some parts from like Mongol or something like that, because those don't look like regular Green Lantern boots. He probably reuses some parts from one of these bigger figures that I don't have yet. If anybody knows in the comments, please let me know. But yeah, to me, I suspect these are not boots that are original. I'll probably do some research on that myself later. But if you know in the comments, please let me know. One more thing I'll say about Kyle Rayner is that he was Green Lantern during the Grant Morrison run on Justice League, which was a comic book that I very much enjoyed. JLA, as it was called at that time. And he was pretty cool on that. Again, good thing they put all those rubber tabs on there, because otherwise he might just fall right out of the package. All it does is frustrate me. It doesn't do you any good. All right, so here he is a heavy figure. Heavy figure. All right, and he has a ring construct himself, which is apparently Mjolnir. It's got like a meat tenderizer texture on the hammerhead. Crazy, man. Crazy. All right, so it does have another rubber tab around that because God knows I haven't opened enough rubber tabs on this thing yet. Ugh. And again, since there's a lot of ridges and everything, the rubber tab just tends to kind of slip into the ridges, and then you gotta find a way to dig it out. Okay, so there's the hammer. And that actually did come out really easily. So it did need something to bind it into the package. But I think tape would have worked just as well. So we got the hammer out. It's really cool looking. Like I said, it's got this kind of meat tenderizer kind of texture to it. So if you happen to have a villain like Sinestro, for example, bam, 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 that would do some damage to him. All right. So again, like looking at Sinestro, you can see what I'm talking about. How like they managed to give these fairly spandexy kind of outfits some interesting texture to it. I like it a lot better than say what they did with Jon Stewart here, where it's almost like he's wearing like a the outfit that Batman would wear at the end of a Joel Schumacher movie. That that kind of surface. I don't like that as much. So, but they do have a new Jon Stewart that's coming out that's going to have a little bit more of a this sort of look to it, which I like. So, and Kilowog's got a lot of interesting textures to his suit too, and they do seem kind of like I said, not necessarily like Green Lantern-ish kind of details. They could be Green Lantern-ish kind of details, but I don't think they necessarily are. I wonder if he reuses some parts from like one of the Bad Lanterns or something, or if they're intending on those figures sharing the parts. Now you can see that one difference between Kilowog and the traditional Green Lantern suit, as modeled by Hal Jordan in this instance, is you can see that Hal has kind of almost like a turtleneck kind of quality to his collar. And you can see that Jon Stewart has that as well. And even Kyle Rayner, in all of his 90s glory, has like a little bit of a turtleneck kind of quality to his collar. But Kilowog had a much lower open sort of collar, closer to what Aquaman has. And I think that's because they wanted to emphasize that big bull neck that the character had. He's a very big, bulky figure. He's got a lot of heft to him. Like, this is a character that like they did not bother to make him small at all. Like they put like details on his elbow joints. That's interesting. So like, instead of hiding the elbow peg, they kind of enhanced the elbow peg and worked it into the design. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's go over his articulation. Kilowog can barely look up at all. He can look down a little bit. That's nice. He can tilt his head quizzically from side to side, which is good because, again, Kilowog's a guy who gets confused a lot. So you rotate the head all the way around. He's got the cool Mcfarlane torso articulation. Surprisingly, very good articulation. Like I'm very impressed with the articulation of the torso. Look at that. Look, our boy can move. So arms can move up about that far. He does have butterfly joints, but they're not gonna be like quite as effective as they would on a smaller figure. But again, still surprisingly effective. He does have a bicep swivel. Bicep rotates all the way around. He has a single joint of articulation at the elbow, and that's about as much articulation as you're going to get out of it. But, honestly, with a figure this muscle bound, I don't think double jointed elbows would help. So he does not have the cool Mcfarlane ball joints. Again, probably just because his wrists are so bulky that the ball joint would be too obvious. But you can rotate the wrist all the way around, and it does have a hinge right here. So you can move the wrist back about that far and forward about that far. So it's still some pretty good articulation at the wrist. Leg articulation. Oh, our boy does not have that impressive articulation at the hips. That's about as far up as I can get his hips to move. They move back about that far. Obviously somewhat hindered by the rubber trunk piece, but honestly, again, the character is so muscle bound, there's only so much you could do with his legs anyway. So, but it's still enough you can get him into like some pretty good flight poses, I think. Neither of these characters came with a flight stand, which is a little more forgivable on Kilowog because he weighs 15 pounds. But I think Kyle would work really nicely on a flight stand. And I keep saying what they ought to do with the Green Lantern figures is give them a flight stand, but mold it in some translucent green plastic. So that way it looks kind of like a little ring construct, like a little bit of a ring trail, maybe, as they fly through space or whatever. So I think that would be really cool. But yeah, you can get them into a cool flight pose. If you can get a flight stand that will support this guy's weight, that might be a fun way to display him. Now, he does have double jointed knees. That's about the range of articulation you get on the knees. So this is pretty decent for a figure of this bulk. He does have a swivel at the ankle, and like ankle can point down about that far, ankle can point up about that far. But again, not the Mcfarlane ball joints, just because he's freaking huge, it would probably look weird. So, and then of course toe articulation to show off. Now, of Kilowog's accessories, obviously he has the power battery, and his hands are pliable enough that I can squeeze the handle of the power battery into his hands. So there he is. He can charge up his ring. There he is, charging up his ring. We can take that back off. And he does not have an extra hand. He's got a solid fist for the ring hand. So that means he's got to be a lefty as far as his accessories go. And there he is with that. Now, of this second sword that, again, I believe this is supposed to be Kyle's sword. But I was looking at the handle. It's got a nice thick handle. Maybe Kilowog can hold it. Let's see. It's a little loose, but he actually can't hold that sword if he wanted to. But I would try to, put it in between his fingers as best you can. But like I said, it's not. I don't think it's made necessarily for Kilowog to hold, but he can hold it if he wanted to. So, do I recommend this set? Well, I would definitely recommend this set if you don't already have a Kyle Rayner figure, because this is a very nice Kyle Rayner figure, and frankly, it is better than the one that I already had. But the only reason I'm saying that is because of the color differentiation. It does have a different head sculpt, like I said, a slightly different head sculpt, but I don't know if that justifies buying an entirely new figure. I don't even know if the better colors justify buying an entirely new figure. But if you missed out on this 90s Kyle Rayner, which I believe was a Target exclusive, I think, here's another way to get that figure, so that's nice. But I do wish they'd had both the figures separately, and then I could have made that decision on my own. This is definitely a figure that I would pick up if I'd seen him for cheap, even if I already had the other Kyle Rayner. I do like the different colors better enough that I would like to have him in my collection, but I probably wouldn't want to pay a whole lot for him since I already had this figure, basically. But you can see the colors match up a lot better with Hal Jordan here and with John Stewart. They all look really good together, and it also matches up a lot better with the John Stewart from Superpowers, which, one of my complaints about the Hal Jordan that Mcfarlane did in their Superpowers line was I didn't like that shade of green as well as this shade of green. To me, this is a pretty definitive shade of green for Green Lantern. And why is that? Oh, probably because it's the same shade as the original Superpowers Green Lantern, the Kenner version, which I still think is one of the best figures ever made of this character. And of course, Kilowog has that same shade of green, but there's a little bit of, I guess to bring out some of the details, he's got a little bit of a lighter green dry brushing on it. It looks really cool. Like I said, Kilowog's the rock star of this set. And this is a set where it's like, I want to say the price on it is actually a little bit more than you would imagine it would be for like a big figure like this and a regular figure if you bought them separately. But I got it on Amazon, and I did my thing where I paid it off with gift cards, so I basically got it for free. So I'm not going to complain. But but yeah, it would be a little pricey for some people, and I had seen some people, well, too rich for my blood, and especially if it's one where you already bought this Kyle Rayner figure before. It's like, now you want me to spend like extra money on a figure I already have, and I really just want Kilowog. But maybe they'll re-release Kilowog by himself at some point. I do think this is a nice figure, and it would probably behoove them to release it again. What I would recommend they do for a second release of Kilowog, if they want to do him separately, is give him white gloves. Because in the original costume, Kilowog had white gloves. And this is obviously based on one of the later versions where he's got the green bracers with black gloves, like how John Stewart should have had black gloves here instead of green gloves. I still need to repaint that. But yeah, I think that would be a cool thing to do. Just do all this in white. I think that would be enough to justify doing a second figure of Kilowog, so you could have a separate one rather than having to buy them in a 2-pack. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this episode. I will be back on Monday, and I'm probably going to do a couple of videos then. I will open something else up, and I will do the little video where I talk about the monitor, since I'm behind on that. But if you want to make sure you don't miss that, make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this figure, what you think about these characters in general, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.